In the early hours of the morning, Mr. and Mrs. Astrovik crept silently through the house, a handwritten note clutched in the latter's hand. With great care they opened the door to their eldest son's room, and saw him there, still fast asleep in his bed, drool running down his face. "I don't like this, Daniel," whispered Mrs. Astrovik. "I really don't like this." "It will be fine, Penny," Mr. Astrovik said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "But leaving him on his own, and today of all days, it's the worst sort of thing imaginable. It really is. It'll all be worth it. He's far better off not knowing what's coming. Until it's ready." Mrs. Astrovik nodded, and carefully placed the note down on the bedside table, as her eyes began to fill with tears. There, Penny," said Mr. Astrovik, now rubbing her back softly. "It's not really goodbye after all." Mrs. Astrovik wiped her eyes and left the room. Mr. Astrovik made his exit too, but not before he looked again at his son and whispered, "Good luck, Barry Astrovik." Barry Astrovik and the Magician's Stone, written and performed by C.J. Fairley. Act 1. Absentee Birthday. As the phone alarm blared, Barry reluctantly stirred from his sleep, bemoaning the fact that today was Wednesday, which meant double history, his least favourite subject, due to it being taught by his least favourite teacher, Professor O'Doy. But then he realised that there was something different about this particular Wednesday. Wednesday the 27th of January. "Holy crap!" Barry exclaimed, now jumping from his bed with excitement. "It's my birthday!" Quickly dressing, Barry rushed out of his room and, in order to save time, decided to slide down the banister to the bottom of the stairs. This didn't work, as he lost his balance and fell backwards, luckily without too much injury. He then walked into the kitchen, expecting to see the other members of his family there. His mother perhaps making some banana bread, his father reading today's edition of the Esquire Tribune, his brother Jason eating the last of the Cocoa Pops, or his grandpa Dimitri trying to play with the light bulb in the fridge. But no one was there. Confused, he began to wander the house to see who was around. Going past his room again, he then noticed a note that was left there on his bedside table. "Barry, sorry we can't be there for you on your 18th birthday, but we have to take your grandfather to the emergency room." He looked directly at the sun again. "We'll be back as soon as..." "No, Grandpa Dimitri, don't light that lamp!" "Oh, looks like we're going to be a while. Anyway, happy birthday, Barry. Love, Mom and Dad." Barry folded the note up, slightly disappointed, but understanding the predicament his parents were now embroiled in. In his advancing years, Grandpa Dimitri seemed to be becoming more like a moth with his bizarre obsession with light sources. But Barry was sure that his friends would still be around to spend the day with him. These hopes were dashed when he opened his phone to find an inbox of messages, wishing him a happy birthday, but also regrets that the senders were unable to join him for the day. "Happy B-Day, Barry. Sorry I won't be able to see much of you today," Drew had written. "Barry, I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. Unfortunately, I won't be able to see you, but still, happy birthday." Vanessa had said, as usual writing her text to be more akin to an essay. The more of these messages Barry read, the more downhearted he was becoming. "Can't see you today, but happy birthday, Susan." What do I have your number? This is absurd. O'Doy. "Won't be there, but Ali's good some Geburtstag." "It means happy birthday." Ludwig. "Busy at the bar, but happy birthday, Hank." "Oh, do I have to?" Lorraine. "I have lice!" That last text from Clyde confirmed to Barry that none of his friends, or indeed any acquaintance of his for that matter, were going to be here for him on his birthday. But his last hope for company came in as Jason entered the room. "Happy birthday, bro." "Thanks, Jason," Barry said as the two brothers hugged. "You don't seem too happy," said Jason. "Come on, you're 18 now. Sure, you can't drink yet, but you can still vote and all that other adult stuff." "I know," Barry said. It's just Mom and Dad aren't going to be around. They had to take Grandpa Dimitri to the emergency room." He looked at the sun again. "Yeah. And I've got all these messages from everyone saying they won't be around either." "Oh, well, that'll be that field trip today." Barry was taken aback by this. "What field trip?" "The field trip Professor Foltigal is taking us on. It was all arranged the other day." "What? I don't remember this. When did this happen?" "Well, Drew tried calling you about it, but when he did, you were apparently fighting some kind of sea serpent." Barry thought back to this, now recalling that Drew had called him while he was being attacked by a monstrous sea serpent, which had just appeared suddenly before him while he was running late for school last week. That sea monster nearly killed me, Barry said, so I think you can cut me some slack. Was there really a sea monster? Jason asked, with a tone of slight disbelief. Quite sure. It wasn't the first time Barry had encountered some kind of monster, but hopefully it would be the last. Well, sorry, Barry, but it looks like you're on your own today. But Barry couldn't believe it. Now his own brother wasn't going to be with him. Jason was now headed for the door. I've got to go. We're all to meet at the theatre pretty soon. Okay, Barry said dejectedly. What are you all seeing? Jason's eyes darted from side to side, almost as though he was afraid to answer. Hamilton, he said, and promptly left before Barry could react. Wait, what? Oh, damn it! The school was practically empty, with most students away to see Hamilton, the lucky ones. And Barry was among the few who weren't able to go, and as he walked towards the history classroom for boring as hell 101, he recognized very few others who were still around. Though there was someone he did, or at least he thought he did. A raven-haired girl running down another hallway, looking as though she didn't want to be spotted. For a brief second, Barry thought it might have been Selena Claremont, the girl he had met in the future. Long story, but he had reasoned that it couldn't be. Could it? Before he could act upon this curiosity, the girl had disappeared. When Barry arrived to the history classroom, he found that he was the only one there. He took a seat and immediately slumped in disappointment and loneliness. A small robin flew through the open window and landed on the desk in front of Barry, who now finally had at least some company. God, he really was feeling lonely. This was when Professor Horace Adoy came in, oblivious to the lack of students present. Class, I am not at all sorry I'm late, but what the devil? Where is everyone? Not here, Prof, said Barry. I can see that, Astrovik, said Adoy indignantly. I'm just amazed that of all the students to be absent, you're the only one that isn't. Well, at least we have this robin to keep us company, said Barry, gesturing to the small bird in front of him. This sent Adoy into a panicked frenzy. Get out, Robin! Shoo! 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 He began frantically waving his arms, and the robin flew back out the window in fright. Gah! I hate birds, filthy creatures. It's so... What's the word? Absurd? Suggested Barry, as this seemed to be the only adjective Adoy seemed to ever use. No, that's not it. But I really, really hate birds. For instance, a few months ago, there was a really scary raven perched upon my chamber door. It was horrifying. Well, said Barry, since there's no one here, I guess class is dismissed, right? Don't be absurd. Headmaster Redset has made it clear we can't allow students to just wander the hallways like some kind of wanderers. Now, if you'll turn to page 394, we shall read how... But Barry had stopped listening as the mystery girl, who may or may not be Selena, ran past the classroom. Getting to his seat, Barry left with no regard as to what could be learned from page 394. Professor Adoy saw him leave, shouting after him, Hey, where do you think you... Nah, what do I care? And proceeded to put his feet up on a desk and read a magazine. Meanwhile, Barry ran after the girl, trying to get her attention. And eventually he did, as she spun around on the spot and pointed some kind of wooden stick at him. Deposso! With a loud bang, a bolt of white light fired out of the stick and hit Barry in the chest, sending him flying backwards into some lockers. The girl stood over Barry, looking highly displeased and now up close, less like Selena. Watch it, kid, or the next one goes in the eye, she threatened. At least she had the same attitude as Selena. Barry had got to his feet cautiously. Okay, but I'm hardly a kid, I'm 18. Hey, good for you, the girl said sarcastically. Now stay out of my way. Whoa, hold up. Who are you? I don't have time for this. Why not? Inquired Barry. What are you doing here? Suddenly, a large serpent burst out of another classroom, blocking the hallway and baring its sharp fangs. Ah, jeez, land, sea serpent, shouted Barry, as the serpent pounced. Act 2. Underground Trials. The serpent got dangerously close to biting one of them before the girl waved her stick again and shouted, Immobilis! This caused the serpent to suddenly freeze in place just inches in front of Barry's face. He cautiously touched one of the fangs to prove to himself that it was frozen. Whoa. The girl twirled the stick, which was evidently some kind of magic wand. Yeah, I'm a witch. A teenage mistress of magic. I can do stuff like that. I see, said Barry, despite the fact that he didn't really understand. Thus far, he had encountered time travel, monsters, and now magic. was going to be next? Parallel dimensions? Dismissing the train of thought for a second, Barry then asked, I don't think I got your name before. You didn't, the girl said, walking defiantly past the frozen serpent. Then, reluctantly, it's Belle. That's a nice name. Oh, shut up, I don't have time for small talk. Barry was surprised by this hostility. You know, for someone with such a nice name, you're not really a nice person. I don't have time to be nice, Belle said. I'm on a mission. A magic mission? Asked Barry with excitement. Like a quest? Can I join you? No. And why not? Can you perform magic? Belle asked with her hands on her hips. I know some card tricks. But aside from that, then you'd be useless, said Belle, continuing to walk away. Well, I don't know about useless. But before he could come up with a reason as to why he wasn't useless, Barry saw out of the corner of his eye that the serpent was no longer frozen and was now slithering towards them. Oh, damn it, this charm didn't hold, shouted Belle, and she pointed her wand again. Immobilis! The spell fired again, but this time it ricocheted off the serpent. The serpent hissed, and suddenly flames erupted from the serpent's skin and completely engulfed it, seemingly without harming the creature itself. Okay, snakes on fire now, snakes on fire, Barry stammered. Theseus! Shouted Belle, and this time a miniature snowstorm began to blast its way out of the wand tip. This, however, seemed inadequate to quell the serpent's flames. Why isn't this working? Belle said through gritted teeth. Inspiration then took hold of Barry. Wait, I know what to do. He ran down the hallway, grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall, and ran back with it. But instead of spraying the foam, Barry used the extinguisher to beat the serpent. No one had ever accused Barry of being the most logical. This, however, did yield some results, as the extinguisher burst open, splattering that area of the hallway completely in foam, enough to stop the serpent's flames. Vampiri Ivanesca! Shouted Belle. With another wave of her wand, the serpent began to disintegrate until there was nothing left but ash. She looked over at Barry, covered head to toe in foam. She waved her wand again to clear it away and said, in a surrender tone, Fine, you can help. That is, if you know where the archives are kept. I think so, Barry said. Follow me. He began leading Belle down the hallway, and then asked, Can you explain how there's magic? Why wouldn't there be magic? Replied Belle, almost as though the idea had never occurred to her in her life. Well, I've already dealt with sci-fi stuff, time travel and all that jazz, explained Barry. So how can there be magic as well? Belle stopped, looking annoyed. Oh, well, the universe is a complicated place, and I could explain to you at length how science and magic can coincide. Or we can hurry up and stop a dark wizard from taking over the world. God's priorities! Okay, Barry said. Archives are this way. He indicated a door which led down to the basement. Belle muttered, Lumos, which caused the end of her wand to illuminate and light up the dark basement. Inside the archives there were aisles of filing cabinets, and Belle immediately began to rummage through them, while Barry asked her more questions about magic. So what was with that land sea serpent? Shut up. And is there really a dark wizard trying to take over the world? Shut up. Do you get to go to Hogwarts? Seriously, Barry, shut up. I swear to the gods, if you don't let me concentrate on this, I'm going to turn you into a newt. Barry was taken aback by this. A newt? Don't worry, you should get better, Belle said rather bashfully then. Aha! She produced a blueprint and examined it under the wand's illuminated tip. Here we go, schematics of the underground caverns under the school. Great. Why do we need that? No time to explain. Make time, said Barry, growing impatient. If I'm going to be helping you, I think I have a right to know just what the hell is going on. Belle sighed and finally said, That fire serpent and that sea serpent that appeared the other day were sent by Cornelius Agrippa. He is a dark wizard who desires nothing but complete control over this world. And to do this, Agrippa intends to use the legendary Stone of Power, which was hidden under this building centuries ago. The Stone of Power? Asked Barry in disbelief. What an imaginative name. The stone is dangerous, interceded Belle. Even in the right hands, its power is too unpredictable. And it's hidden under this school. That seems awfully familiar. According to these schematics, Belle said, we can enter the cavern through a trap door in the headmaster's office. Redset's office, said Barry. There's no way we can get in there. It's forbidden. The security will be too tight. This fear was later abated, however, when they discovered that the office door had been left unlocked, much to Barry's surprise. Belle was the one to find the trapdoor concealed under the desk. She tried to push it aside, but with its drawers and surface top overloaded with documents and folders and a desktop computer, this did not work. It was only with Barry's assistance that they managed to move it. Thanks, said Belle sheepishly. Just glad I could help. They opened the trapdoor which swung upwards and rested on the dislodged desk. All that they could see was a seemingly endless darkness. Ladies first, Barry tried, but Belle pushed him through the trapdoor, forcing him to go first. As she heard Barry's screams fade away, she jumped in after him. What neither of them had realised was that they weren't alone in that office, for as soon as Belle had disappeared down the trap hole, a pot plant and a suitcase transformed back into their true forms. The dark wizard Cornelius Agrippa, who stood resplendent in his cape and twirled moustache, and his familiar, a black Labrador puppy. So, said Agrippa, they think they can beat me to the stone? We'll show them, won't we, Padfoot? Padfoot the puppy began to bark playfully, which could always melt even Agrippa's wicked heart. Yes, that's right. Who's a good puppy? Who's a good puppy? You are. You are. Agrippa then picked up Padfoot and held him close as he then jumped through the trapdoor after the two teens. The fall down the trapdoor proved to be a lot longer than they expected, but after what felt like an eternity, Barry and Belle landed on something rubbery and slimy. Ew! Squealed Barry. It's so gooey and slimy. Oh no, is it Devil Snare? Get it off! Get it off! Belle cast a Lumos spell again to reveal that what they had landed on was, in fact, not Devil Snare, but rather a colourful bouncy castle. Oh, this is unexpected, said a baffled Barry as he and Belle clambered off. When they walked away down the cavern corridor, the bouncy castle deflated, just in time for Agrippa to land with a thud on the rocky ground. Padfoot was still secure in his arms and was unharmed. In the depths of the cavern, Barry and Belle came across a chamber, with columns standing tall and a stone table in the centre, laden with 7 bottles of different shapes, sizes, and colours. Huh, this is weird, Barry said. I was expecting maybe a troll or something. I mean, there was already a ghoul in the school basement, so a troll wouldn't have been surprising. Just be thankful there isn't a troll, Belle said. They're not easy to get past, although these potions won't be any easier. What are you talking about? They're just bottles. We can just keep going through that other door. Though when Barry tried this, black flames erupted to block the path ahead, while purple flames appeared to block the way they came in. Again with the fire, complained Barry. Belle examined the bottles and found a piece of parchment and began to read aloud. Danger lies before you, while safety lies behind. 2 of us will help you, whichever one you would find. I see. It's a logic puzzle. Logic? Uh-oh. Belle read through the riddle, muttering to herself. Barry tried examining the bottles, sniffing each one. Finally, Belle seemed to have something. Okay, I think I've got it. I could be wrong, but the smallest bottle should move us forward. Barry picked up the smallest bottle and sniffed, catching a strong scent of vinegar. Belle took the potion from him and prepared to drink. Whoa, hold on, what are you doing? Barry said. We have to drink it to get to the black fire. But what if that's the wrong one? You should let me drink it first. That's crazy. If it is the wrong one, it could kill you. Disregarding this, Barry swiped the bottle away from Belle. Then at least you can fight Agrippa. Besides, it's not like this birthday's been anything special. What's a little poison going to do? Before Belle could protest, Barry uncorked the bottle and took a sip. Almost immediately, he began to gag. Gah! Oh, it tastes like vinegar too. Belle took the bottle and drank some of the potion, proceeded to gag on the aftertaste as well. And now, the moment of truth. Together, Barry and Belle walked through the black fire, flames licking about them, but without leaving horrible burns that it normally would. On the other side, they looked at each other, and couldn't help but laugh at what they just did. Who just walks through fire like that? I, might have been a bit melodramatic a second ago, admitted Barry. But today's your birthday. Yeah. Belle smiled for the first time on this adventure. Happy birthday. Thanks, said Barry. And they continued down the cavern and into a second chamber, where they found an antique mirror sitting in the middle of the room. I've only ever heard stories about this place, said Belle with awe. In here, there is an ultimate test to see whether one is worthy of possessing the stone. Well, I still can't believe it's under a high school. Seriously, what are the chances? They approached the mirror and looked into it, but instead of seeing the reflections, all they saw was a red stone floating inside the glass. Now we just have to figure out how to get this out of the mirror, Belle said. No, I'll be the one doing that, shouted a voice from behind. Barry and Belle spun around and saw Agrippa standing at the top of the steps, a manic and triumphant look on his face. Act 3. The Chamber of the Stone. "Agrippa!" shouted Belle, whipping out her wand of defiance. "You vile fiend! You'll never reach the—" "Oh my god, that's such a cute puppy!" interrupted Barry, who had noticed Padfoot standing happily behind his wicked master. "What's his name?" This seemed to distract Agrippa for a second. "Oh, his name is Padfoot, and he is the bestest boy in the world, aren't you, boy?" Okay, Belle said in confusion. She had not expected to see such a soft side to the evil wizard. But Agrippa quickly reverted back to his sinister side, and with a wave of his hand he sent Barry and Belle flying to the side, allowing him to stride down the steps unimpeded. A test of worth," Agrippa muttered to himself, stroking his moustache. "Oh, damn it, how do I do this?" As he stretched out his hand to touch the glass, Belle got to her feet and pointed her wand. "Impedimenta!" A blast of light knocked Agrippa backward, but didn't keep him down. He recovered and produced his own wand, a wickedly curved stick seemingly made from the wood of a walnut tree, and sent a retaliatory spell. "Crucio! Finite incantatem!" With this spell, Belle was able to counter the torture curse, and soon a wizarding duel ensued. Meanwhile, Barry, unnoticed by Edith and Ben, was now looking into the mirror. A test of worth. Oh, damn it, how do I do this? After a few seconds, Barry decided to try something very brave and very stupid, and he elbowed the mirror, smashing it to pieces. The red stone that had been floating inside the glass fell to the ground and rolled to Barry's feet. That was easy. Behind him, the duel was intensifying. "Stupefy! Confringo! Protego! Expelliarmus!" Soon, Agrippa was beginning to get the upper hand, and when the two of his spells collided, he forced Belle back into the corner, pushing his spells closer to her. Belle was forced to look away from the blinding light of the colliding spells. "Don't you look away from me, Belle!" screamed Agrippa, a manic gleam in his eye. "I want you to look at me when I kill you. I want to see the light leave your eyes." Suddenly, Agrippa was blasted into the wall by a violent burst of red light. Falling to the ground, Agrippa didn't move, clearly knocked out. Belle looked up to see Barry holding the Stone of Power. You got the stone? But how? It was trapped in the mirror." Barry shrugged. "I smashed it." "You smashed the—" "Oh well." Padfoot barked at Agrippa's unconscious body, then proceeded to lick his nose in the hope of stirring him, but to no avail. "That is one cute puppy," said Belle, smiling. "So you do have a heart," smirked Barry. "Of course I do," said Belle. "I just had to concentrate on my mission. But I suppose I made me too, I don't know, intense. I'm sorry if I came across as, well, a wicked witch." No, it's okay," said Barry. "I knew another girl like you. Driven, determined, mean as hell at first, but somehow—" He then became lost in reminiscing the short time he had with Selena. "Are you still with her?" asked Belle, who seemed to have picked up on something in Barry's tone. "No, we got separated by time travel on a saving the world type mission, the usual." Belle thought for a second, then said, "Tell you what, since it's your birthday, I'll grant you a wish." "Just one?" Barry asked. "Not the whole three?" "I'm not a djinn," said Belle, though the humour wasn't lost on her for once. "Just focus on what you want most in the whole world." Barry raised his eyebrows, sceptical about the nature of this particular spell, but closed his eyes and thought hard about what he wanted. He could think of a few things, like being able to skip all future history classes, or bringing an end to the unification party, whom he knew would threaten the freedom of the world in the future, or perhaps some kind of infinitely replenishing hot dog. But if he was completely honest with himself, the thing he wanted most was to be reunited with Selena, the girl who gave his life a greater purpose and made him believe he could be better than himself. Belle waved her wand, and there was a flash of purple light. After some time, Barry and Belle managed to return back up to the surface, with the unconscious Agrippa, the puppy Padfoot, whom Belle would now adopt for her own, and the Stone of Power, which had stuck itself to Barry's hand. "Any ideas on getting it off?" asked Barry, becoming more concerned about the red glow emitting from the dangerously powerful rock. But Belle had a simple solution. "Defendo!" The stone fell from Barry's hand and Belle caught it in midair with a levitation spell. I told you it was dangerous. No kidding, it nearly took my skin off, Barry said, rubbing the palm of his hand. So, what happens now? I take Agrippa back to the council where they'll imprison him for his crimes, and then I'll find a new hiding place for the Stone of Power. If he's magic, can't he just escape any prison? Asked Barry, concerned about the feasibility of such a prison. Not if it's a magic prison, answered Belle, as though this was obvious. I'd better be going, it's a long journey back to Scotland. So you do come from Hogwarts, said Barry excitedly. Belle shook her head, smiling. Something like that. I gotta admit, Barry said, for the longest time I'd waited for my letter from Hogwarts telling me I was a wizard. Oh, that kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. It's all through emails now, Belle said, in a tone that didn't make it clear whether it was a joke or not. I'm just glad magic does exist, said Barry. Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? Belle then did something unexpected and kissed Barry quickly on the cheek. Not in any romantic way, but a platonic, friendly way. Happy birthday, Barry Astrovik. And don't worry, your wish will come true soon enough. As Belle walked away with the levitated Agrippa and stone and the puppy close to her heels, Barry didn't realize what she had said. Hang on, I didn't tell you my surname. Belle looked over her shoulder and smiled mischievously. Magic. And with a wink and a loud crack, Belle, along with Agrippa, Padfoot and the stone, vanished, leaving Barry there on his own, smiling to himself. The rest of the day was rather uneventful, until Barry returned home, where he was greeted with a chorus of "Surprise!" There, waiting for him were his friends, family and well-wishers, who had organised a surprise birthday party for him. But I thought you were all busy today. Ha, laughed Vanessa. We lied so we could arrange all this. Yeah, Hamilton's not showing in Esquire Bay. I mean, get real, said Jason. Wait, Barry said. So all of you lied to me on my birthday? That's awesome! The guests laughed and began mingling. Clyde made his way towards Barry and clapped an arm around him. Well, if it counts for anything, he said, I didn't lie to you. Didn't you tell me you had lice? Yeah, that's right, and Clyde said, scratching his scalp. Barry made a mental note not to accept any food Clyde offered him tonight. But it wouldn't be a problem, as Susan had now brought in a cake with birthday candles. Go on, Barry, make a wish. Barry smiled to himself and simply said, I've already made one, and proceeded to blow out the candles, officially making him 18. On the other side of the Atlantic, in the secluded highlands of Scotland, the ruins of a once impressive castle stood, surrounded by mist and enchantment. In the main assembly room, a council of 3 elderly wizards and 1 younger witch sat around the table. Belle stood before them, holding the stone in the air above her open hand. You have retrieved the stone, said one of the wizards. Yes, Master Evander, said Belle, bowing her head. Good, said another council member, Emish. Agrippa is not to get his hands on any of the magical stones. You're right, and... Wait, said Belle. Then she realized what was said. Stones. Plural. The council members all looked at each other, their eyes darting. No, Emish said finally. Belle looked at them suspiciously, but knew that if the council weren't willing to share, there was no way in hell that they would. Admittedly, she had hoped that with the recent addition of her friend Adina to the council might have changed things, but evidently it hadn't. Rather than stand there and waste more time, Belle chose to leave, deciding that there were more pressing things to attend to. Meanwhile, down near the dungeons of the castle, Cornelius Agrippa was trapped in an overly complicated restraint, his eyes filled with a murderous rage. As soon as he was free, he would show no mercy. The end. Barry Astrovik and the Magician's Stone was written and performed by C.J. Fair, with music performed by Taylor Davis, Lucas King, and Lin-Manuel Miranda.